The first greatest step in freeing mankind from government was the separation of money from state, and that was Bitcoin. The second greatest step in freeing mankind from government is the separation of identity from state. And that is the unique ID feature that Block One and Dan Larimer have patented and gotten approved and are bringing to fruition for use on platforms such as Voice, but it can be used on any platform, really. This solution is really a lot bigger, I think, than people realized at first. I think it's why Block One on June 1st was only able to give part of the story. And it's why they knew that what they were doing was so huge when it didn't come across as being perhaps as big of a deal as I think it really is. I think they're correct. I think that Voice in and of itself is big. But I think the bigger innovation here is the unique ID underlying and underpinning the voice system that they couldn't talk about because they were trying to patent it as they were working on it. And so this is something they couldn't discuss. And I bet you they really, really wanted to on June 1st. So instead, we got just the byproduct, which is a social media platform running on top of this identity solution that's blockchain based. And just as a quick recap of how the technology works in a very broad nutshell from what I gathered from the patent, basically you take a photo of yourself and you register yourself as a user. And in doing so, it could scan the various networks around you to add further data to the richness of this snapshot. I think it also said something about taking a photo every second or two and kind of polling it numerous times, a repetitive picture taken. Also, it could take a 3D scan of the face using the biometric scanner in the various phones out today. It can take audio recordings, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi signals. And with that picture, with that snapshot of you recording your face, because we obviously have this technology now. If you look at Facebook, it can tag a user anywhere in Facebook and say, hey, would you like to tag yourself? You appeared in this photo. The technology is readily available to recognize users based on facial patterns. It's already out. And so Block One is taking that technology to the next step with incorporating all this other data surrounding a photo. So when you register yourself with that first photo, that's the first step. The next step is to take a photo with another person with you in the same photo. And in doing so, it compares your face to your previous face biometric scan. It compares their face to their previous face biometric scan because they went through the same process, right? And now that you have this joint photo with both of you, you can then say, I approve, I verify that Joe says who he is. And Joe verifies that I am who I am. And by doing so, we have just elevated our verification to another level. We have said that two people now verify Colin as being Colin. Colin says it and Joe says it. And then you take a group photo. Maybe there's 15 people in that photo. And all 15 people in that photo can say, hey, yeah, Colin's who he says he was. And I say that they're who they are. And we have just exponentially increased the verification reliability of the unique ID. And so essentially that's what it's doing. It's building up a reputational circle of trust, if you will, based on biometric data and based on social agreement that the biometric data is accurate. It's really quite an invincible system. It would be very hard pressed for someone to try to fake that on any kind of a massive scale. You could put a lot of effort into faking that on an individual account by account scale, and maybe you could pull it off with an enormous amount of resources. But honestly, it's probably a lot less friction to just generate genuine content, get real user support, and that's exactly what the unique ID solution from Block One brings to the table. And I think it's really going to be huge. I think it's going to be as big for freeing people as Bitcoin was for currency. And so this is the next installment of humanity freeing itself to yet another higher level. So now we have freedom of information, we have freedom of money and separation of money from state, and now we are going to, for the first time ever in history, we're going to have the freedom of identity from government and state. Because up until now, you've been born in a country and by default have been given an identity representative of that country. But what this unique ID feature solves is humongous. It solves everything from fraud in voting, voter fraud. It solves manipulation of ideas and opinions. I think it's coming to light more and more how manipulated the media is, and how things like Facebook and news articles and bots upvoting things, false votes, fake votes, pushing forward agendas, pushing forward opinions, pushing forward ideas that are backed by money. Money, can buy a lot, and it can buy people's opinions, and it can mold and shape society's viewpoint of things when it has enough money to manipulate what we see and hear and read on the internet. Because the internet, honestly, is the biggest form of communication that we have today, and it's only growing more so. And people who want to control opinion and guide ideas know this, and therefore they have put money into controlling and guiding opinions. If you look at the Bitcoin split, that's one example. In 2016-17, when the Bitcoin network split, that was caused by censorship, that was caused by manipulation of ideas, by pushing ideas out. To this day, it continues. And there's upvote bots and weird bots that push things, false narratives. And that's just one very, very small example that we as crypto people probably are familiar with. But it goes as deep as political elections and campaigns. But prior to an election with Trump and Hillary, an enormous amount of manipulation of social media content. And regardless of whether you think that Hillary or Trump should have won, I think it's fair to say that there was an enormous amount of manipulation going on. In California, I think that there's something like 101% of the citizens are registered voters. So we have more than every citizen of that state being registered, which is not obviously physically possible. That's voter fraud. And in light of the importance, I'm just painting a picture of the importance that identity plays, because you can see how when it's violated, when you can't identify one user being a real person, really anything's possible. And the name for that's a Sybil attack. A Sybil attack is where you can create unlimited number of accounts and simulate an unlimited number of users, but you yourself could be literally just one person. And the more money you have, the more manipulation you can put forth. And that's really the way that money continues to have a stranglehold on information and on ideas in our society. So to have something as amazing as the unique ID solution come by, I really think sets the precedent for an entire new landscape of freedom of ideas, freedom from manipulation of false ideas, from agenda pushing, because it's all going to be on the blockchain, recorded on the blockchain. And when we have the technology to biometrically prove identity to 99.99% certainty, that's going to be a huge game changer. Sure, there will always be someone out there who will try to game the system, but I think what I see here with the unique ID proposal from Dan Larimer and Block One, it's going to be very, very difficult to game the system. And it's going to be, in fact, so difficult that doing so is going to be utterly ineffective, because you could throw a lot of money at this problem, but the amount of productivity to try to Sybil attack this unique ID system is going to be so expensive that it's not going to work, because your result to fake accounts will be so small in light of all the legitimate real users that the real legitimate users are going to have a far stronger say and vote despite the money being thrown at it. So this is what I see coming down the pipeline. I think that we have just witnessed a pivotal moment in history, and I'm not one to just say this lightly. I think that Bitcoin in 2009 was a humongous freeing moment for mankind when it comes to money. And I think that 10 years later, 2019, with the advent of Block One's unique ID technology, that is going to set the bar for freeing identity from nation states and empowering users and people as individuals, not manipulated, like we have never seen before. So I'm very excited for the future that this holds. Thank you for joining me, guys. Take care.